Hello, welcome to VR Roundtable, episode 50. My name's Gary, and joining me, as always, is Anthony, Steve, and Chris. And we'll be talking about VR for the next hour and a half to 2 hours. We'll see how we go. We don't make... We've not got anything set in stone, so we'll see how long the news and the games will take us through this. So, but anyway, Steve, how are you this week?
I'm doing good. I don't know if anybody watching this can see it, but I'm rocking my Tyrion battle scar in honor of the season finale of Game of Thrones tonight. So I didn't quite get it in such a glorious way as he did. I got mine screwing around with my dog, but nevertheless, it's a pretty good 1-to-1 here, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Looks pretty good. Yeah. I'm pleased you did that. Chris, how are you this week?
I'm good. Classes start today as of posting this podcast, so wish me luck, I guess.
Yeah, it's back at it now. You got some hard work to do, I guess. Anthony, how are you?
I'm good. Last week I was in Bodega Bay. That's why I missed the episode. And I just wanted to mention real quick that I decided to take my PlayStation VR with me. And it travels really well. It's not too bad. Like I got my PlayStation 4 Pro stuffed into this bag that I had, and all my Move controllers and all the wires and doodads and stuff. And then I took my headset, and we have like all of our clothes in this giant duffel bag, and I put the headset in there and put some clothes around it. And when I got to Bodega Bay, I mean, obviously I was with the family and we were doing things and stuff, but sometimes there were boring periods where there just wasn't nothing going on. And it was just, like the women were watching certain movies and stuff and, stuff like that. And so I was like, if I got really bored, I could just go back to this little room that we had, and I put on the PSVR with my headphones and the PSVR. And the cool thing about it is there's no difference whatsoever. Absolutely identical experience to if I'm in my own house. I didn't bring a TV or anything. It was just the PSVR and the headset. And I just think it's so cool that you can take something like that on the road with you and get the absolutely identical experience. So that was really cool.
There's been people, I've seen it, and I actually thought about it for a while before I brought my PlayStation stuff up here to the room I'm in now. But there are people that are getting like these, I don't know, they're basically these travel cases, and they're putting their PlayStation in them, and it's got space for the VR, and they're having everything pre-wired to a power strip so that when they go somewhere, all they have to do is plug in the one plug. Everything else is set up. The camera's kind of mounted to the lid when you open it. So the camera's all there, and you just sit on the floor. You can be set up and have it turned on in like 120 seconds. I think it's a great idea. And you're right. The portability is awesome. And we can only imagine what it's going to be like when we have inside out tracking that's good. And you won't even have to fool with the one camera. It just works.
Yeah. I think this is part of the dream of VR as well, where you can go anywhere and experience things. You can take a break from reality and be somewhere else, really.
Well, you know what? I've always gone on different trips, and I would take like a PlayStation or an Xbox. Like I would take that stuff with me. But the problem is you get there and the TV that they have in the hotel room, maybe you can't hook it up, or the speakers are so tiny and it's like, oh man, I can't really enjoy this. Or like the TV is bolted somewhere. And it's really cool because this is the first time in my life where I've had an absolutely identical experience regardless of where I was.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, well, we've got a few news stories to get through this week, so let's get straight into the first one. And this was a big news story that broke actually not long after we recorded last week's episode, unfortunately. So we didn't get into it last week, but this is the HTC Vive price reduction. So they've reduced the price of the Vive from $799, £759, down to $599 and £599. So it's quite a big price reduction. And because this broke last week, we didn't get into it, but it's a lot of people have been talking about this, and it's Vive, HTC are saying that this isn't a reaction to the Oculus price reduction at all, although, you know, it's difficult to think that it isn't in some ways. But it's good news for the consumer, of course, if they can get into VR in a lower price point, then that's all good stuff. There's some questions whether, you know, people should still purchase the Oculus Rift at the price that it currently is, or now that the HTC Vive is now reduced in price, whether that's the better option. There's a lot of questions to ask about this kind of stuff. Anthony, I'll go over to you first on this. What do you think? Is the Rift still the better price at the moment?
Right now, well, it's complicated because when you go down this road, you start to get into a tit for tat kind of a situation. And so it's like right now, for example, there's a $200 price difference, and that is pretty significant. $200 is nothing to sneeze about. However, if you do go with the Oculus Rift, and if you want an identical experience to what the Vive brings, then you really do need that third sensor at least. You might even want a fourth sensor depending on the situation, but you need that third sensor. But the thing that people don't realize as well is very likely, depending on your computer motherboard and those kinds of things, you're probably going to need an Initech USB card or something similar to get your USBs up to par. And then when you start to wire things around, you're going to realize, oh man, I need an extension for this. I need an extension for that. So you start buying these extra cables and stuff. So when you add it all together, it's like, are you saving a ton? But then wait a minute, because the Oculus guy will say, well, yeah, all of that is true, but you need to buy a deluxe audio strap because, hey, I got an Oculus. I just put it on my head. It's easy peasy. You know, my audio is there. And you got to pay an extra $100 for the deluxe audio strap to put it up to that level as well. So it gets into that kind of a tit for tat thing. For me, really, in the grand scheme of things, though, it's like if you're going to jump on a VR bandwagon and this is the bandwagon that you're going to be on, what's $200 in the grand scheme of things? So for me, like if someone comes to me, I'm like, well, do you got a gigantic room or do you got a normal room? If you got a normal room, I'm probably going to say, you know what? Oculus Rift's probably the way to go. If you got a gigantic room and you can go all out like full holodeck style, then yeah, go with the HTC Vive. And when they get closer, when it's $100 difference, then it's going to really be more of like whatever, you know, either way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. What I thought the price was good. At first I thought, well, maybe they would have been better served if they went into a sale for $499 and then after the sale became $599, only because I think at $499, the Vive at $499 competes really well with the Rift at $399, because you pretty much do, like you said, you have to have the third sensor and maybe a USB card, maybe some USB extensions, and you're going to spend about $100 on that. So for $499 right now, you can have a room scale Oculus Rift set up. So I would have liked to seen HTC do that. But then on the other hand, that also gets confusing. So I think they went in and at $599, that's how much it's going to cost after this Oculus sale is over. It's going to be, you know, anywhere from $550 to $599 to get a Rift and full room scale capabilities once the sale is over. And it's competing right there lockstep with the HTC Vive. I'm kind of torn on the deluxe audio strap aspect. I would love, this would have been a good time for them to announce that they're going to start bundling it with it, because it shouldn't have a ton of cost. That thing just doesn't cost that much. It's relatively cheap headphones and some plastic. So they could have bitten the bullet and put in a lot of consumer favor, I think, by bundling it at that time, but they chose not to. I guess they still want to make $100 off of it. So anyways, I think this is fantastic, and it takes away, because we've talked a lot over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks about if someone comes to us and says, what headset should I get? and we've all pretty much agreed that we were recommending the Rift because of the price. Like the Vive didn't bring anything else to the table to represent such a big price gap. That's no longer a question now. So now I'm back to recommending it based on each person's specific circumstance. You know, Anthony laid it out really well. You got a big room, Vive all the way. If you got glasses, you should consider that you may need the Vive for the better fitment. So taking it from there, I think this is great news, and I think it helps the industry, and there's really no downside.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's much more of a decision now. We have these prices much closer, and you know, of course, you know, a few weeks ago we were all recommending the Rift if somebody was to jump in, depending on the circumstances, room size, etc. But now it's much more of a question whether to go for the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive based on these prices. Chris, we all own these both headsets, and what's your opinion of like the relative values of these and the experience that they offer?
Yeah, I'd pretty much agree with everything you guys have said. Like, I have this giant living room that I'm going to set my Vive up in. I would not set up a Rift in there. That would be ridiculous. I'd be running cables all over the place. But having the Rift in my like office bedroom works pretty well. So I think it really does depend on the room. But one thing that's kind of, or I don't think we mentioned yet, is just how late HTC was with lowering this price. Because so many people have already bought Oculus Rifts. Like, we've been recommending it. I'm sure a bunch of people bought Rifts because of that, and like all my friends bought Rifts. So I feel like HTC kind of dropped the ball on actually getting this price down. You know, they're a little late. So that's maybe one thing to bring
Well, you
up.
know, initially they were saying that you know, they felt that they didn't need to lower their price to be competitive, that their product stood on its own at the $799 price. And what I think convinced them was when Oculus extended the sale. Oculus knew what they were doing, and they were putting the pressure. I think maybe thinking that HTC couldn't, but now that HTC has countered, I think ultimately that's bad for Oculus, because HTC, the Vive, had all the momentum with VR, honestly, up from launch all up through really to the most latest price reduction, I think, at least. And now the Vive can still swing that momentum, and I think it's still going to be the more successful unit between the two.
Yeah.
Hey, do you guys think that if LG comes out, like, or anybody really, if anybody comes out with a Steam VR package, do you think it has to be $599 or less, or do you think they could come in higher with Knuckles or whatever?
Yeah, it's a difficult question. I think now that HTC have lowered this bar, I think, to be honest, even if a new headset like LG or something came out and it had, even if it was bundled with Knuckles, I don't know if I was a new consumer going into VR, whether I'd necessarily be swayed by that at this stage. I'd probably still stick with the sort of the lower price entry point into Steam VR virtual reality, to be honest. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think if the LG was to be announced tomorrow, that it needed to be $599. I think if they're going to stand a chance, because the Vive, say what you will about HTC, I don't have a lot of confidence in them as a company, but the Vive has a very strong name associated relative to VR. And HTC recognizes that. And if consumers, and unless they're just super nerds about it and can dig in and really know what improvements the LG would have and can value that, I think the average person is going to see the Vive, see it for a cheaper price, knows that that's the device that they've been kind of hearing about in the background for the last year and a half, while they've not necessarily paid too close attention to VR, and they're going to go with that. So if LG's smart, they'll do it at $599.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one other quick question before we get to the next topic. Speaking of LG, I'm looking at the date right now. It's August 27th. And, you know, we're a handful of days away from September. Is there any possible chance that the LG still comes out this year, or is that gone? Like, is that like, forget about that? Chris, how about you?
I don't know. I really hope it comes out this year. I feel like they need to get out as soon as possible. I really want some competition in the Steam VR space. One thing maybe we could talk about a little bit is I think there might be a little bit of an issue when trying to market Knuckles to like general consumers. So let's say you have an LG with knuckles, and then the Vive is less, but it has the motion controllers. I feel like the general public wouldn't know like track controller versus, I don't know, finger tracking. I feel like that could be an issue when they roll that out.
I agree. I think if, like I say, if I was a consumer coming in not knowing anything at that stage, then would the Knuckles controllers persuade me to spend any more money on them? Sure, if you've got a comparable price between the two, and you know the specs are clearly defined between the two systems, then you go for the one that's slightly higher spec. But yeah, will an average consumer go that far? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the Knuckles though, I still want to see how that shakes out. That's a big open question mark for me in regards to even taking the LG off the table, just in general. How are they going to address that fragmentation? And I know they're going to be some sort of base layer compatibility where you can play any game with a Vive wand or with a Knuckles controller, and that's what everyone's believing. But at the same time, I keep going back to the Mage's Tale. And I know it's not a Steam game, but it's just the first game that I personally played that it was just so difficult to play with the Vive wand. And I'm really wonder if the benefits of the Knuckles is going to be constantly kind of hamstrung by always having to look backwards and be compatible with the Vive wands.
The other thing,
my biggest go ahead, Gary.
Well, I was just going to mention very quickly that they've lowered the price of the headset, the package. You know, the HTC Vive as a whole is lowered. But one thing that existing Vive users would like to see is the price of the accessories to come down as well, because everything that you want to purchase from the HTC Vive website is very, very expensive. So I'd love to see some kind of price drop on the controllers, for example. That's the main one for me.
I was just going to say what Steve was talking about with the Knuckles and kind of the haves and the have-nots. I really, really hope that Valve internally has come to the conclusion. I mean, they have to. I have to imagine this. Okay, so they have this Knuckles controller idea, right? It's a great idea. It's awesome. You get to like let go of things and grab things and the fingers and all that. All of that is wonderful, right? But like Steve was pointing to, you don't want to get into a situation where 10% of your audience has this new controller, 90% doesn't. Like, what Valve needs to do, and even if it doesn't necessarily benefit them from a business standpoint, but they, like next year, once Knuckles is being sold and people can actually buy Knuckles, you should not be able to get the old Vive wands. Those things need to be gone. And even if that doesn't benefit Valve directly and they have to work out a deal with HTC where they're kind of just giving them a deal on the Knuckles, you got to get the Knuckles needs to be in every box from that point forward. Because if you're selling the Knuckles individually and you're still buying a Vive box that comes with the wands, what are you doing? You know, I mean, I know they're two different companies, but you have to get everybody aboard this new thing so that eventually nobody has the wands anymore. I
agree with that. And I think a lot of people are assuming, and if I were betting, I would agree with most people. So I'm not judging anybody, but I think a lot of people are assuming that these controllers are going to be manufactured by Valve, and they very well may be. But there's also a partnership with HTC is not off the table. And that's in Valve's interest to have HTC manufacture these things and take on that burden, take on that risk, while Valve just sits back licensing the technology, no risk, taking the pay from the software that it's ultimately going to be related to it. And so we could see HTC cranking these things out. Again, don't know that. I'm just saying it's a possibility. People are acting like that's a foregone conclusion. And without any proof, I wouldn't assume so. And more so to your point, though, where you were going, Oculus doesn't have the problem you were describing, even though they didn't ship with touch at launch. They didn't ship with any motion controller. So all Oculus games that are motion capable, which is basically everything that they're releasing now, it's just a touch. There is no fragmentation per se. It's just either you have touch controllers or not. And they've announced it's something like 9 out of every 10 Rift headset has now been attached to touch, and that's a good relationship. So the Steam side is very interesting, and I can't wait to see how it's going to pan out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sticking with HTC for this next news story, this is the sort of speculation and rumors that were coming out that HTC could possibly be spinning off Vive into its own separate company. And I think we've been hearing rumors about this for a few months now, although this seems to be the first indication that it's a realistic possibility. And, you know, HTC, a few weeks ago, we heard that they've lost a lot of money on the 9th quarter in a row. They've made a loss overall in their company. So it's a lot of people are looking at this and thinking, you know, a HTC the future, and I think it could possibly be a benefit for them to spin Vive off. And this will lead on to another story that we've got after this. But first of all, let's get some initial impressions. Chris, what do you think of this? Have you got any thoughts on whether HTC should sort of spin Vive off into its own company?
I think it's probably pretty likely. And this news is from a report by Bloomberg, which said that they're considering a strategic investor selling or spinning off the Vive into a different business. But yeah, I think it's really likely, considering HTC kind of, I don't know, it's like the Vive is a completely different product category than anything HTC has done before this. And yeah, I think it's going to happen one of these months or something. I don't know. They really need to start making a profit. And if the Vive side makes profit, selling it would make sense.
Yeah, I think the technology behind some of these things, obviously HTC being a mobile phone company, and a lot of the technology is crossover in some ways, only in terms of, I guess, the screens, the IMUs and things like that are involved in it. But going forward, I can imagine that these will be regarded as completely different kinds of businesses. Steve, what do you think of this?
I think the idea is very interesting, and I do not have a degree in corporate law or anything, so I'll preface my comments with that. But can they, like if they straight up sell it, like, hey, the 4 of us, we pull some money together and we buy the Vive brand? Okay, we can do that if we had enough money. But can HTC financially break it out and still control it? And just separate the books like that? I'm not sure that's legal. And I say this because if they are not solvent, like we said, 9 straight quarters of losses, you can't just take your profitable leg and move it somewhere else, stick it inside a new cubby hole that is safe from bankruptcy elements, and then bankrupt your non-profitable divisions. I just don't know that's legal. And then if they're talking about selling it, where it's just straight up to all new people, then it's no longer HTC, and it's just a whole new company. So I think it makes sense, but I don't see how they can legally do that. So a spin-off and still maintaining control seems to me unlikely from a capital and from an ownership standpoint. Now, from a marketing standpoint, I've been saying it for a while that I think they've been given hints that they may kind of break the HTC branding off of it, and it's just going with Vive. This is a Vive brand, and that would be more akin to Oculus and not the Rift. Vive becomes the brand, and then they release multiple headsets and products that may have a different name, but fall under the Vive umbrella. I think that makes a ton of sense, and if I was them, I would strongly consider it.
Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, well, HTC is based in Taiwan, I believe, and the laws there, I studied Taiwan law for 12 years. No, I'm just playing. But basically, the laws there obviously are different. So I don't know how easy or hard it would be, but I do know that I've heard companies talk about this before. I remember there was talk, Sony was struggling at one point a number of years back. Like, they were taking major losses with their Sony movie division, and I think maybe the Sony music, and then like their TV sales were like in the crapper, and like the only thing that was doing anything for them really was kind of their PlayStation brand. And I think there was some talk then about maybe like separating PlayStation, making it's kind of its own division. And the idea behind it is you don't want the rest of the company dragging down this exciting new division that seems to be poised to go somewhere. For example, Target owned Mervyn's, and Mervyn's was like dragging them down, and they finally got rid of Mervyn's. But it's just, I don't think it's super easy to do this either. It can be done, but it's complicated. It takes months. HTC has all these shareholders, and the shareholders have to agree, okay, well, how many shares do I get then of this new company? Because that's really what I want. And so they have to figure all that out. It's really complicated. This is not something that is just going to happen overnight. But you know what? I remember hearing about this like a year ago. So this might be going on behind the scenes, because I swear like a year ago I heard about this.
Yeah, there was definitely some talk about this a while ago as well. And like you say, with I heard that about Sony sort of breaking off PlayStation into its own company, and also recently I've been hearing things about Microsoft possibly moving Xbox into its own company as well. So I don't know how far any of these things will get. I've been hearing about these things for a long time, so we'll see. But leading on from this is another news story that Palmer Luckey, he first wrote a tweet which alluded to this, but then what he did is he made a post on the R Oculus and the R Vive subreddits and said, should I buy Vive? What do you guys think? And, you know, he was talking specifically to the individual subreddits with this. You know, this guy, I don't know what he's doing. He's like, sometimes I just think he's trolling everybody, to be honest, because has he got enough money to do this in the first place? And also, I mean, it'd be great if he did this, because everybody would go crazy if he actually bought Vive. That's the first thing to say. I don't know. I mean, I'm lost for words here. Steve, what do you think?
I like how he had to go back and edit. And he says, edit. Yeah. The company, not the headset. I already have one of those. Sorry for the ambiguity. You know, I think he's trolling. I think he might have enough money because honestly, these headsets aren't sold in such a high number that it's a massive, you know, it's billions of dollars of worth. So he might have enough money. It probably wouldn't just be him. He would probably venture up with 2 other obscenely rich people and do this. And so he's either trolling, and if he's trolling, it's kind of dickish. I've defended Palmer before. I appreciate what he's done. But that's just trolling, and that's just kind of being a flame bait. So I don't really like that. And if he's being serious, then that's probably where we should take the conversation. But if he's being serious, then it gets very interesting, because as a person, he comes off as a bit immature, and he's still very young, and that's fine. But I do believe that he has a passion for the products and a passion for the industry, and if he can leverage the industry and his name and push it forward, then I welcome that idea, because personally I'm not a fan of HTC and the way they do things. So a fresh take on the company may not be bad, but it can't go down like it did with Oculus. Some of his juvenile ways would need to be kept in check somehow.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. Chris, what do you think of this? Because Palmer Luckey, he's been known to make various comments and posts. You know, he made this tweet, should I save Altspace VR, a few weeks ago as well. And they were saved. Whether it was Palmer Luckey or not, we don't know. But he's making these kinds of things. And to me, it feels like trolling, unless there is actual, obviously valid sort of decision-making behind the scenes where he wants to do this kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, it's probably trolling. I don't know. I posted on the post. I said, I don't know. We can't swear on the show, right? Can we? We
can. We are explicit.
Yeah. We can, and I just did.
Okay, good. I said, holy shit, this is savage as fuck. Please do it. And I got 100 upvotes. So I think people think it's pretty cool. But yeah, no, I think it'd be really good for the Vive company, because Palmer was a really good, he was good at engineering that stuff and figuring out the pros and cons of the headsets. Yeah, I don't know. I just have a like for this guy. Like I interviewed him when I was like, I don't know, 14 or something. So like, I think I want it to happen, but it probably won't, you know?
No,
He needs, hang on, he needs proof. Like he needs to prove that he saved Altspace or something. He needs to show that he's done something, right?
Yeah, I agree. For some reason, I like Palmer Luckey, and you know, some of the things. Obviously, I don't like everything he's done or everything that's rumored to have done or whatever. But for some reason, I don't know what it is about the guy. He's got a passion, and I think that's one of the most important things. Whether you agree with his politics or not, that's another question, of course. But he's showing a passion for certain parts of technology, and I think that's what draws me towards him. Anthony, I don't know. What do you think of Palmer Luckey?
Oh, I kind of like the guy. I mean, yeah, you know, some of the things that he's said and stuff, but I like the fact that he doesn't care. You know, he's just gonna do. He does his own thing. He's just living his own life. Like when he was in Japan and doing the cosplay and dressing up like a crazy person and doing all this stuff. He's just living his life. He doesn't have any fear about like what people think about him, and I respect that. I really respect that. All of the things that he said though, and like some of the other stuff, you know, I'm not down with a lot of that, but I'm cool with the fact that he's just being himself and he's not afraid to be himself, and that's cool.
I would like to see it happen, if for anything, to see the train wreck meltdown that would occur on the different subreddits. Just like that would be just be phenomenal to watch. That's reason enough for me to want to see it happen, honestly.
Yeah, we'll probably just hear in a few weeks that Vive has been bought by an anonymous person, and we'll all have this speculation. It probably won't turn out to be Palmer Luckey, but who knows? Anyway, let's go on to the next news story. And this is something we've had these games, you know, Fallout 4 VR, Doom VFR, and Skyrim VR. These have been sort of the big titles for VR since E3, really, when these were all formally announced, I guess. But now we've actually got some release dates. Now, originally, Fallout 4 VR was supposed to, I believe it was scheduled for October this year. Unfortunately, it's been put back a little bit to December the 12th. But we've got Doom VFR coming out on December the 1st, and also Skyrim VR for PSVR on November 17th. So the Doom is on PSVR and Vive, and Fallout 4 is only on Vive at the moment, but presumably it will be released on Steam, so Oculus Rift owners can get on board with that as well. This is good news in a way. We've got final dates, but also a little bit disappointing because I was expecting to be playing Fallout 4 in October. Steve?
Yep, and yeah, that does suck. One other point, and I don't know, Gary, maybe you missed it, but when the dates were first announced, the Vive Twitter account was saying Fallout 4 exclusively on Vive, and then 12-ish hours later, they sort of redacted and said, well, it's really Bethesda's thing to announce, and then Bethesda said, yes, it's coming to Vive on this date, but we are very interested, or we look forward to being on all platforms eventually. Something to that effect. It basically said that it's not going to be Vive exclusive, or I mean, I don't know how you have something that's Vive exclusive. They're probably what they really mean is Steam exclusive. Does that mean it's going to come to the Oculus store? Don't know. They could be referring to PlayStation, because there have been a lot of speculation that Fallout 4 will make its way to PlayStation. So we'll see how that pans out.
One quick thing I want to mention about, because everybody is assuming, all the Oculus Rift owners are assuming, oh yeah, I'll be able to play Fallout 4. That's not going to be a problem. Like, I don't think there's a very small number of Oculus Rift owners that think they're going to have any problem whatsoever playing Fallout 4 this December 12th. But I was in one thread where these guys were kind of talking about like the lawsuit and some of the implications with the lawsuit, where actually if they were to allow a backdoor way for Oculus Rift owners to play Fallout 4 VR, they're actually hurting themselves in the lawsuit. And I don't have all the reasoning, what people were talking about, but I was reading this, and some of the points that they were making, it's a lot of like lawyer type stuff, but some of the points they were making, I was like, oh man, this could be this might be a big freaking can of worms when this happens, because they could easily put some stuff in there where it's like the Google thing where, you know, you like someone's going to have to like break something to make it happen. Like it's not just going to work like you would expect it to work. Now, I'm not saying any of this is actually going to happen. I'm just saying these guys were talking about some of the legal ramifications of it. And so I don't know that it's necessarily a done deal that Rift owners will be playing Fallout 4 right away.
I think it is. I think they'll be playing it within hours. They may put a hardware check on it, but this is all going to run on the OpenVR SDK. There's unlike, you know, trying to run Oculus SDK games on the Vive, you don't have that issue going the other way. And I think it's going to work. And I think the hardware bypass is already there because of Google Earth. And I think within a few hours of this game dropping on Steam, people are going to be playing it on their Rifts, only because there's no way to really attack that. And more so, I think it's in Bethesda / ZeniMax's best interest to let this game be played by what is a large portion of the PC VR community. Like, they still have obligations. Well, hell, I don't know if they're a public company or not, but they have obligations to the people that have financially invested in them, whether they be private or public, to make a return on investments, and not selling to 25%, 30%, 40%, however much of the PC VR market that the Oculus Rift consumers hold. That's just, it's silly and it's petty if they go down that road. And there is case law, the whole Samsung and Apple lawsuit. There are plenty of examples where two major corporations were locked head to head in the courtroom for years, but yet still managed to do business in unrelated aspects and semi-unrelated aspects regarding iPhones and things like that. So we have precedent of this sort of thing happening, and at the end of the day, money talks and bullshit walks.
The other thing as well that we're hearing from this is that Fallout 4 is for the Vive, and then we've got Skyrim VR, which is PSVR. Now, there's a lot of talk that people are saying, you know, Fallout 4 will come over to PSVR and Skyrim will come over to PC. I don't think there's been anything official announced yet, but Chris, what do you think of this? And, you know, we've got these release dates now, but is there any one of these games in particular you'd like to try in VR?
Probably Fallout 4, I'm sure, like most of you guys. I agree with Anthony and Steve kind of in a way. Like, I do think that it's not going to work with Rift right out of the box, but I do think there'll be a patch from those, you know, whatever that developer is who does all the stuff, the Revive guy, probably in a few hours. But, you know, yeah. So no, I'm excited for Fallout 4. I'll probably want to play it on the Vive. You know, if you have both, you gotta do that. But
yeah, well, to be honest, I don't think that there will be any. I don't think they'd go out of their way to lock out the Oculus Rift, if I'm being honest. If they do, then obviously there will be some kind of workaround that people can do with this. However, what I am thinking is that just the unique control methods of these two VR systems could come into play on a game like Fallout 4 VR, which is got these complex systems in place. Now, that could be another factor where it's still playable on the Rift, but with the control method, it might make it a little bit more difficult, possibly. I don't know. But that's something else to consider. Just on this as well, there was, because it was Gamescom this past week, and we were getting some reports because there were some demos of Skyrim VR and Doom and Fallout 4 as well coming out of these. Now, some of the comments, in particular, I'm thinking of Skyrim, IGN, for example, they had some reports on this, and they weren't particularly complimentary about how well Skyrim plays in VR. I think they were talking about, you know, it's a good way to play, but I think controls were one of the main issues that were coming up here. Because it's teleport only, and also you've got snap turning, and a lot of people were saying that in order to experience Skyrim in the way it's meant to be played, you need smooth locomotion. in order to absorb yourself in this world. So it's a little bit disconcerting because some of these other reports that we had out of E3 earlier on in the year with Fallout 4 and Skyrim again, you know, they weren't, that there were some concerns that were brought up by various people there. Anthony, have you noticed anything that's caused concern on these games in the reports?
I haven't read a ton of information from Gamescom, like people's opinions and stuff, but I have heard that general vibe that it's like, might not be as great as you thought it was. But I did read one guy, he got a hands-on impression of it. He played it, and he was saying that, well, he was saying the move controllers make the game and they also break the game, that they're part of the best part of the game, that you have hands and you can fire spells and you're holding your sword and it's 1-to-1 and all that. But then the tracking, all the problems that we have with that as well. But he said, the one thing that he said that I was like, oh, that sounds good. He was saying graphically, he thought that it held up with like Farpoint and Resident Evil 7, like with the best that the PSVR has seen. Now, he said he played it on a PS4 Pro at Gamescom. So that was encouraging to hear that, because I remember back to E3, you know, we had heard like, well, Jeremy Williams, I believe, have tested, you know, he was talking about how the scaling thing and it looks like a little mouse door and all that stuff. So this guy wasn't mentioning that at all. I don't know if anybody else from Gamescom has mentioned the scale and the mouse door and that type of thing. But one of the things we need to caution on with outlets like IGN and these kinds of outlets is some of their people, like, do they play PSVR all the time, or do they play it like once every 4 months when there's some big thing that they have to comment on? Because some random person that never plays PSVR and then all of a sudden they play some PSVR, it's easy for them to say, oh, this is garbage, you know, because the tracking is not the same as the Vive and the Oculus. And they may have tried that and they're used to this like tracking never breaking in any way. And then they try the PSVR and they're like, oh, this is garbage. But people that are true PSVR players and have dealt with the PSVR over this year that we've had it, we know that, yeah, PSVR isn't the greatest, but you know what? It mostly does the damn job. And we've kind of figured out how to do it. And we stay within the camera range and stuff like that. So I think some of these opinions that are out there, if they're not from like real PSVR players, I don't know that I put a ton of stock in them.
Yeah. The thing to mention is that we're all VR enthusiasts. And when you hear titles like Fallout 4, Skyrim, Doom, are all coming out on VR, it carries a weight of expectation behind it as well. And I think people who use VR a lot will immediately be thinking, you know, this is the dream game. Something like Fallout 4 VR is the dream game in this generation for VR consumers. And I guess you've got all this expectation building up to certain things, and there's a level of hype that's building up behind these titles. But Chris, do you think, you know, is there too much hype behind these Bethesda titles?
Yeah, I mean, there's always too much hype in the VR industry, it seems like, huh? But yeah, I checked out this article as you guys were talking about it, and yeah, I mean, it sounds like these people haven't played PSVR before, because he's talking about there being glitches like in the game, but it's just tracking issues. Like you say, my right hand was floating several feet away from me and all this stuff, but he's writing it as if it's an issue with the game and the game's broken, but that's clearly like a bad camera placement, like tracking issue. So I don't know.
Yeah. Steve, what do you think of this?
I think the concerns are valid. I'm concerned for it, and in a way, I'm probably more excited for Skyrim than Fallout, only because I think the type of game kind of lends itself to maybe being in VR better. If you're going to talk about motion controllers, because you have a sword, and we've already played games where you throw fireballs, you know, cast your spells and all that. There's all sorts of games that use these mechanics. So I think naturally they translate to motion controls. However, we know also that the PlayStation Move controllers, well, I'll just say this: as far as we know of this game, that if you want to play with motion controllers, with the move controllers, you have to do it, and your method of locomotion is teleport. And a lot of people have been that have been playing the game at Gamescom. I've read some tweets, and I read the whole thing from IGN that I think you're referring to in this, Gary. And I also watched the video that Alana Pierce did, and it seems like one of the major, it's fundamentally sort of breaks Skyrim if you have to teleport around. And they're not able to fully rework. I've seen some commentary where they said that if you're being attacked by multiple enemies in traditional Skyrim, that they gang up on you, but in this VR version they've retweaked the AI so that it's kind of one-on-one, and the other one's kind of stand and watch and then wait for you to take it down. So like if they're going through and kind of retweaking the difficulty and reworking the game so that the motion controls can work, I don't think that is necessarily good, and B, I don't think it's just a function of the PlayStation VR's limited tracking capabilities. I think that's also a function, if we just poof and place that on the Oculus Rift and on the HTC Vive, I think some of those same problems are still there. Ultimately, we will never, with one-to-one motion controls, we will never be able to swing our swords like Kratos. We will never be able to do these amazing double jump backflips and pull off these physical movements. So there is some concern on the creativity and what can be done with a game. So I'm looking very much forward to Skyrim and these other ZeniMax titles, Bethesda titles, but at the same time, I realize that they may become a point of critique of the VR industry. All the naysayers, if these games aren't perfect, the naysayers are going to be able to look back and say, look what happens when you try to do VR. You put a real game in VR and not a tech demo. So I'm a little bit concerned, but I still look forward to it, and I can see myself playing Skyrim with a gamepad if it ends up being this kind of weird flick your wrist around to hit enemies with a sword motion control that some people are describing it as.
Just before we move on to the last news story that I've got this week, something related to this is some news that came out from Bethesda where they said that Fallout 4 VR wouldn't include any DLC. And, this upset a lot of people because they were expecting it to be some kind of like a Game of the Year edition in VR. Presumably, that they've already purchased this game in the past, a lot of people. I haven't, so it didn't bother me too much, this news story, but I can certainly see how people can be a little bit annoyed that they've already spent a significant amount of money, $60 on the game, and then bought all the DLC, and now they're having to pay all over again just for the base game to get it in VR. I can certainly understand that argument. Anthony, I believe that you bought Fallout 4 when it was released originally. What do you think of this? Are you disgruntled that you've got to purchase it again for VR?
No, because I actually bought the physical Xbox One version of Fallout 4 and played like 20-something hours of it, and then kind of like fell off of it and ended up selling it on Craigslist for $25 or something like that. So I don't feel bad at all. The thing about the mods, though, is you would think that once they've taken this Fallout 4 game engine and they've converted it to VR in the way that they want it to be, you would think that the mods, because they're running on that same kind of engine and the same kind of scripts, you would think that that would just translate over as well and that it would all work. But what Steve was talking about with Skyrim, where they have like an enemy waits back because, to make it work right, if they're doing that type of thing, then yeah, that would make sense that maybe with all of this DLC stuff, they'd have to redo all of that too. And that they've already kind of said, look, the whole Fallout 4 game is in there. So they did all the work necessary for that. And that's why this thing took so long, because it's been a long time. This thing was announced, E3 2016. We thought we'd already be playing last year. I thought I'd already be playing Fallout 4 VR by now. We're not getting it till December 12th. So they might have spent a lot of time reworking some certain things in there and trying to do that with all the DLC is a whole nother potential nightmare. And it's another revenue stream for them, you know? So it's like, you know, beggars can't be choosers right now.
Yeah, I think it's obviously they're behind schedule because they just pushed it back to December. So it makes sense that the DLC is something they wouldn't have gotten to. And I understand the consumer perspective too. Like, hey, I've already bought all this DLC, and you know, who, if they were to make it, maybe they would give it away. I doubt it, I guess. But I'm not too mad about it. I'm still really looking forward to it. But I can also say that as a person who's not invested in the game in any way. So I also think that, you know, of these 3 games, there's going to be so much discussion around them. I know we're just on VR Roundtable here. We're probably going to give many of hours of coverage under those 3 games. I'm now at a point where it could be the smallest game and the one that maybe people are the least excited for. And that's the Doom. That could end up being the best one. It wouldn't surprise me at all at this point.
Quick thing about Doom VFR, because I don't believe you guys mentioned this last week, because maybe the video came out afterwards. Like, you know, the new video that they came out, the new trailer that they came out for Doom VFR, where it's kind of like behind the scenes, and they had a couple of the id Software guys sitting there, and they were talking about, you know, how do you do this game in VR, and they were talking about teleport and all that type of stuff. That looked really good to me. I mean, those graphics looked really good. We did hear 3 to 5 hours, so that's the one fly in the ointment. It's going to be a short but sweet experience. But man, graphically, that looked really nice.
It looks good, and yeah, like you say, I think beggars can't be choosers at this stage, and Doom VFR is a cheaper title, and it's got a whole new campaign in it. So maybe people purchasing that have already picked up the original game won't have such a grudge against Bethesda for doing that. Okay, so let's go on to this last news story that I have this week, and this is Oculus and Crytek. This was a video that came out yesterday or the day before, and it was a new kind of locomotion method in VR. And what it was, this video, well, I'll put a link in the description actually today, but you can check this out. And what it is, Crytek are using some kind of leaning motion in order to locomote through a virtual world. And I mean, maybe I've got this wrong, but I thought that a game called Gollum on the PSVR, which is yet to come out, presumably they're still working on it, that used this kind of method as well, this locomotion method. So it doesn't seem like radically new or anything like that. But it's interesting to see that a lot of VR companies and are working with these other companies in order to try and combat this issue with locomotion, because it is one of the main issues with VR at the moment. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's actually, I don't know if you've seen all of them. It's like a playlist of 8 different locomotion methods. Some of them are really stupid. I don't know. I saw this article and like I thought it was going to be cool, but it ended up just being all these really weird locomotion methods that like are totally stupid. One of them was nodding, so you do this to walk. One of them was for turning. To turn, you flick your head like this over and over again. And I don't know, they're just, I mean, it's innovative, it's interesting. I hope, you know, maybe iterating on these more, something good can come out of it. But I don't know, for now I'm just kind of confused.
Yeah, because it is such a big issue, and you know, I think we've all read Ready Player One, and they've got various solutions in that book where they're standing in these huge spheres in part of the book in order to locomote in any direction. You know, locomotion, we want a solution where you don't need a huge room. I guess room scale is great, and it's the most realistic way to experience VR in some ways, but at the same time, we want a locomotion solution where we can experience it in a very small room and feel like we've got these huge vistas to explore and this kind of stuff. Steve, did you see this video?
I didn't. I watched one of them, the first one, which was the chicken locomotion, which was this is, like Chris said, it's all kind of silly, and I think they're just showing off the stuff that they're not going to use. Like, I don't think they're showing us off the successful stuff, and that's fine. I mean, good on them. And I think the biggest takeaway here is that locomotion is a problem. We all know it's a problem, and it's one of those things that's going to need continual evolution.
But it's not a problem for us though, because I mean, you've played Gunheart, Gary's played Gunheart. I don't know if Chris has played Gunheart, but Gunheart, you double tap the touchpad and you're flying 90 miles an hour down a hallway. And there's no nausea whatsoever, at least not for me. I can't speak for Gary and Steve or Chris, but it's like, it almost seems like there's two camps of people, like VR veterans that can fly 90 miles an hour with no issues whatsoever. We don't have a locomotion problem. But then you have the rest of the consumers, because see, we play VR virtually every day or every other day, where other people, regular average Joes, they might play once today and then they might not play for 2 weeks. And is that where we get into problems? So it's almost like we need like two modes in the menu, and it's just like noob mode and expert mode. And it's like noob mode, they can go Vindicta, and you can go like Vindicta worked great, man. Just go like that.
I'm not sure it's just down to nausea. That's the thing. I think it's about immersion as well. Even though I don't get an emotion sickness by using those locomotion methods, I'd love a more immersive experience where I feel like I am actually walking through these worlds. I think that's another part of it, maybe.
Yep. I think like when I'm playing a room scale game, I now find that less immersive, is silly as that sounds, than sometimes using artificial locomotion, because I eventually run into a limit. And I could have the biggest damn room there is imaginable, a giant, UPS airplane hangar, and eventually you're going to hit the other side. I could be playing Fallout
too. The cord is a big problem.
Assuming wireless, but the point is that you can't naturally locomote and take physical steps and not have some sort of artificial barrier that you run into. And so for me, it's ultimately becomes in some way an immersion breaking problem. And the bigger thing that I think the industry has to solve is the general public. Like, they can't be getting sick on this stuff. They have to, when you're making a game and you're going to invest millions and millions and millions into it, like, you got to know that your product can reach a lot of people without, making them sick in the first 30 seconds. Because people develop aversions. I loved VR when I first tried it, but I've now met people that have played here in this room where I am right now that got sick in something right from the get-go. And it's kind of like when they go to a restaurant and get food poisoning, they won't ever go back to it. Like, you become sort of mentally like, ooh, that sounds disgusting. And I think that can happen. And so I understand the continual like push for locomotion. And at this point, I'm not sure that a be-all perfect solution will ever exist.
No, maybe not. Maybe not. It's we're seeing some of these sort of omnidirectional treadmills and things like this, which are all interesting. And I'd love to give those one of those
things, man. Remember that like a year ago, that was all the rage, and Cyber and all that. Yeah,
they're still out there, I think, but I don't know anybody who's actually tried one of these. But I'd love to give it a go.
I just want to. I probably still shouldn't say this, but like when I was talking to Palmer a while ago, I asked him about omnidirectional treadmills off camera, and he basically told me they suck and like don't get one. So that was good.
There we go. Scoop. That's VR Roundtable scoop.
That's the. But yeah, I think the ideal thing is a treadmill that moves in all directions, that feels natural. Have any of you played?
There's a treadmill. It's like what is it called? The Infinity there's
Deck. Yeah, they're actually in the Ready Player One movie. Apparently, they're being featured as like the budget version of these omnidirectional treadmills.
You know, that company that makes that is in Rockland, California, which is like 45 minutes from where I am. I should try to call them up and see if I can try it out or something.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll record it.
Well, they may not want you to. That's the problem.
Yeah, you need
to sign an NDA.
Okay.
Have you guys played Eagle Flight? Because that has a really cool locomotion method. Has anyone tried that? Is that me?
No. Me and
I played it.
Anthony has played it.
Okay. I just wanted to bring that up. I think that's a really cool one for gamepad, at least.
Yeah, and some things like Lone Echo, I thought did not have a locomotion problem, but it's just by the nature of what that game is, that they're not solving it for the industry. They're only solving it for zero-G games.
That's it. Yeah, exactly, because a lot of people will say, locomotion's now been solved because Lone Echo doesn't have this problem. And you think, well, it doesn't work for everything. It doesn't work for every type of game. So what are you talking about? Anyway, so I think that's all the news stories that we've got this week. Has anybody else got anything they want to bring up quickly?
Yeah, something minor. And Anthony, I'm going to ask it to you in question style, but I know you're an NFL fan and a football fan in general. Do you watch Ballers on HBO? And did you see the most recent episode? Oh, okay. So Ballers is a show on HBO. If you've a lot of people call it like Entourage mixed with NFL. And anyways, in this episode, I won't spoil too much, but one of the main characters gets a VR headset, and it's a completely wireless standalone headset, and it didn't resemble any of the items on the market. It almost looked like an OS VR combined with a Rift, but it was completely wireless, and he puts on these gloves. And he's going through a three-way, with a couple chicks. But then they end up, like, the whole episode had VR was a very centric point. And this is a show that has The Rock, and you have The Rock putting on VR headset and checking stuff out. And it wasn't just sexual related. They tied it into the plot of the show. But I just want to bring it up because I like the show. I watch it. It's a popular enough show. It's on HBO. It's one of their kind of main series now. And like I said, it's got The Rock in it, and he's popular right now. And VR was very prominent in it. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Just kind of wanted to throw it up because it's just anytime something like that happens, it's people who don't have headsets are going to notice it, and few people may say, oh, that looks kind of interesting. And they really sold it as a super incredible experience. It's completely unrealistic, though. They went in the wrong direction of Gear VR. Like, they made people think that it's because he was wearing gloves and he was, and so I don't know if they'll, maybe won't sell it the right way, but it still brings attention to it.
Yeah, like you say, it's always good to see these, and I'm noticing a few things as well in like just pop culture VR popping up everywhere now and again as well in just various things. So it's good that that's happening anyway. Okay, so let's move on to what we've been playing. Well, I'll go first on this one. We'll just go. We'll each pick a title. We'll go around one by one. But the first one I want to talk very, very briefly because we discussed it last week is Soulkeeper VR. I won't stay on this too long. It did have an update. We spoke about its problems last week, performance, also bugs and things like this. But it did have a 1.1 update, which gave the game a few more sort of graphic settings. You can have sort of low, medium, high, and ultra. But for some reason, I've tried to go back into this. Again, I'm holding back. I'm not playing too far into it because I want to wait until the game is giving me a better experience overall. When I went in after the update, immediately I loaded my save game, and the hands were all completely like really weirdly wonky in a crazy way. You couldn't move them in the right way or anything like this. But since then, I went back and played through the tutorial section again, and that rectified it. I think it was something to do with the save game after the update that was causing these problems. Now, performance-wise, the tutorial section is now working really, really well, and the graphics look great. Performance is great, and yeah, everything's working really well. As soon as you get outside of that first tutorial section, performance takes a massive hit for whatever reason, and I don't know why this would be, but presumably they're optimizing certain areas with these updates, and they just haven't moved on to this area yet. So it's disappointing. I don't know what to say about this game because I want to like it. I want to be positive about it, and it's very, very difficult at this stage. And I think the developer needs to sort of nip this in the bud. They need to sort out some of these problems very quickly in order for it to still be taken seriously in a few weeks. And like I say, I'm right behind them because I enjoy what they are trying to do with this game, but it's just not there. And I think it's probably best for me to make that clear to everybody thinking of buying this game because it's not cheap. Has anybody else tried this since the update?
I did not, and I'll let the other guys jump in if they had. I just want to echo what you just said because I feel the same way. I'm really rooting for these guys. I love what they've created, and I love the scope of what they're trying to accomplish. And I also think it's a critical time. The window is closing in on them, and they're going to have to get something right and get the hype train rolling again. Because if not, then I think it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Anthony, did you try this game at all?
I wanted to go back into it before our show just to double check, and I just didn't get around to it. So
okay, no problem. Okay, well, we can move on. Chris, what have you got to talk about this week?
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about the new Rec Room quest that came out this past week, called Curse of the Crimson Cauldron. You know, it's just another one of those really fun Rec Room quests. I don't think any of you guys have played one, but they're extremely difficult. And I was in there probably for like an hour and a half or 2 hours with my buddy. And we probably only got maybe 10% through the quest. Like we kept dying and oh my God, it was a mess. But yeah, you know, it's really fun. This one kind of has like a witch vibe to it. There's, you know, things throwing spells at you or fireballs. There's a crossbow. We got to that part. So the crossbow felt great. I was literally on the floor, like trying to shoot out a window. So, you know, it's just a lot of fun if you have friends with VR headsets. I'd recommend playing it as well as all the other Rec Room quests.
That's yeah, I just wanted to ask you actually, because I haven't gone into any of these quests yet actually, but I think they've got the futuristic one. Is it the Rise of Jumbotron? Is that
that sounds right?
Yeah. They've got the futuristic one, then like a medieval dungeon crawler type quest, and then this one. So how does this differ from the others? Is it basically the same gameplay just in a different setting?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the funny thing about Rec Room is all their quests, or except the future one, I think they all kind of take place in like a school. So like, you know, the first room is a gym, but it's completely decked out with trees and an environment. And then the second area was kind of like the lockers, like there were lockers along the wall and looked like a school hallway. So in that regard, it's all similar. And I'm pretty sure these are the same monsters that were in the first Rec Room quest, not the Jumbotron one, but some of the same monsters. But other than that, it's just another fun quest to try out.
Yeah.
Now, someone correct me if I'm wrong. I can't confirm it. I'm looking, but I thought they announced Rec Room was coming to PlayStation VR. Am I crazy? Must be.
Don't remember. Okay. Yeah, I remember
it seems like everything is coming to PlayStation VR, but
that might be wild. I might be crossing the streams with Smashbox Arena, but yeah, I thought it was coming to PSVR. I was gonna say that'd be a good time to get into Rec Room because you'll have an influx of people to play with, assuming it was cross-platform. But I'll just shut up about it because I'm wrong.
Yeah, no. Well, 1 month ago, I just looked it up as you were talking. 1 month ago, someone asked the developer on email, and the developer said they're working on a PSVR version, but they're not sure when or if it'll happen, but they're trying. So it sounds like
all right, I am redeemed. Credibility restored. All right.
Well, Steve, why don't you go ahead? What have you been playing this week?
So we got a key for a game that released this week, Hangry Bunnies from Mars, and I checked it out for 45 minutes to an hour, and it was a fun little wave shooter. But that's that. It's a wave shooter, so take from that what you will. I played it. I had been playing another game I might talk about on my Rift, and I went into it on my Rift, and the controllers don't line up quite right. So I pulled it off and went onto it in my Vive, and it played a lot better. And there's it's got good cartoony graphics and some humor. It's well voice acted. The people that you're hearing talk to you and that are telling you what's going to happen and what's going on. So it's got a lot of nice things about it, but its core gameplay is it's a wave shooter, and you know, I'm kind of just tired of those, but I do like this one, and my kids, my son in particular, he really likes it. So I think they've accomplished you know, maybe their goal for the target audience they're looking for.
Yeah, I played this briefly as well. I didn't spend as long as you with it because it is just it's another wave shooter, and there's not a lot more to say than that. But it is a good one, and if you want to play a wave shooter, this is not a bad choice at all. It's the graphics are great, as you mentioned, Steve. The voice work on this is probably one of the standout points for me. I think that works really well. And while you're playing the level, you've got a voice in your ear, sort of. Commenting as to how well you're doing throughout the levels and things like this, but there's not a lot to say on it. I enjoyed it, but like you, I'm tired of wave shooters a little bit, really.
I was in the top 10 in the world in Hangry Bunnies from Mars.
Yeah, I got to 16. I got to 16.
All right.
Anthony, you played this as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I played it for a brief period of time. But the thing that stuck out to me about it when I first got in there, you're kind of in this like a garage or something, and there's like a van there, and there's different things that are placed around, and it kind of has like a job simulator-ish kind of vibe when you're first in there. It really reminded me of Dick Wild. When you're first in Dick Wild, you're like in the garage area, and there's all these things around, and it has that cartoony look. And it looked really good. And I was in there and I'm like, oh, it has a really cartoony look. It looks really good. I'm like, this might be better than I thought it was going to be. Maybe this is actually pretty darn good. And then when you actually get into the game and you start shooting the guys, like you guys said, the voice work, there's real voice acting, different accents. It's like they spent some money on this. They had to have had voice people in doing different things and talking to you back and forth. It's not just a cheapo, quickly bang it out wave shooter. My problem is, though, see, I'm not going to agree with what you guys said where it's a decent wave shooter. I don't think it is. I think the gameplay is actually pretty bad, because when I was playing it, for me, I'm shooting the guns at these like bunnies. And so there are these bunnies, you shoot them and then they turn into like these kind of like monster things, and then you got to shoot them and then they explode. But for me, when I'm shooting them, it's like, if I'm going to shoot something in a game, this is just for any developer out there. If you're going to shoot something in the game, when your projectile thing hits the enemy, there needs to be some kind of, you need to feel something like you're doing something. For me, it's just like I'm just shooting gunshots out there towards those bunnies, and yeah, they're changing colors and things are happening, but I don't really feel like I'm affecting it that much. It just seems like I'm just kind of like button mashing with my shooting.
Yeah, I do get that. I've got to say, one of my notes about this game that I've got down here is actually that the guns themselves feel quite satisfying to shoot. But you're right, the point where you're hitting the enemies, there's not a lot of feedback when you're hitting the enemies. They sort of bounce backwards a little bit, and then they'll turn into these other monsters, which you don't get a lot of feedback from that. But when I first went in, I felt like the guns were pretty satisfying to shoot, but there's no feedback from when you're actually progressing through this level, really.
Yeah, it wasn't horrible. Like, I'm not trying to say it's horrible, but I'm just saying that, like, for me, I would play Dick Wild way over playing this.
Okay. Anthony, why don't you go ahead next? I don't know what you've been playing this week.
Okay, so I wasn't here last week. I don't really have a new game for this week to talk about. So I thought, let me go back to Killing Floor Incursion, because I never really got to talk about that. And I do have some stuff to say about it. Okay, so Killing Floor Incursion, it's a weird game, man, because it's like, I can't see how this game would appeal to everybody out there, because it's so visceral. The zombies that are coming at you, I mean, we're all on a different scale when it comes to like the horror level that we can deal with, and like invading your space, and just the type of imagery that is put on you. And some people can handle stuff in a certain way and they're like, oh yeah, this is fun. Other people are like, they can get freaked out and intimidated by things. And I would put myself into the category of somebody like, I can handle most all of this horror stuff that's out there, but you do see some things that, you know, freaks you out a little bit. And it's just Killing Floor Incursion. I'm in the game and these zombies are coming at you relentlessly. And there's like a lot of different versions of the zombies. And there's this one guy that, like, he comes storming out like this, and he's just storming at you, and he just wants to get you so bad, and he's got such a pissed off look on his face. And I got into this thing with this game where I was just swinging wildly. You know, I mean, I got to the point where I'm using my knives a lot and just slashing the hell out of these things. And like, it's almost like those, like I'll have these dreams where something is trying to kill me in a dream, you know, and the only way I can survive is to kill this thing that's trying to kill me. And so it's like a killer be killed scenario. And when I was in Killing Floor Incursion, in some of these certain areas, I get the same exact feeling where it's like, okay, these guys are going to kill me. Well, fuck it. I'm going to kill the hell out of these guys. And so I just start, like, I almost turn into my mind. It's like almost like I'm going to be a crazy Charles Manson slasher killer. You know, I'm going to become the worst nightmare you've ever seen because it's the only way I'm going to survive these crazy zombies. But basically, it's just a visceral game. I like it. It does have serious bugs, though. I have to mention 2 bugs. I mean, I'm sure you guys mentioned it already, but the bug in the first level, the farmhouse level, you get to the boss. And what happens is if you don't beat the boss, I don't know if maybe they've fixed this since then, but if you don't beat the boss, you die. And let's say you save your game and then you're playing something else or you're not playing VR. You come back later, you sign in, you load that level, you're in the boss level. No boss. The boss doesn't show up. You're like, well, what do I got to do to activate this boss? And then so eventually what I realized is, oh, I'm going to have to go back to the level before that, like midway through the farmhouse level, finish all of that, then beat the boss. And then now I get to the next level. So that happened to me early on. And I might have already mentioned this, but it happened to me again in the level, this Paris level, where I don't want to spoil it too much, but you're on a rooftop and you're using a sniper rifle and you have to snipe these guys. And I sniped them all. I killed all of them. It's all over with, right? But then I'm like, okay, well, what's going to happen now? And then all of a sudden I'm attacked by like 30 zombies, but they're all invisible. But I'm getting the sound effect of just like they're punching me or whatever. And then I die and then it's game over. And then if I restart it, it's the same exact thing. So what I'm going to have to do now, I didn't finish it, but I'm going to have to go back to the previous stage, beat that to then get to the boss and then beat the boss all in one fell swoop, because you cannot continue at the boss and do it because it's like some type of bug or something. So it does have some bugs, but man, if you want some visceral in your face, action, and if you can deal with it, I really like Killing Floor Incursion. It's kind of horror-y, man. It's not going to appeal to everybody.
Do you see, Gary had, when we were talking about it last week, Gary had said that he was kind of tired of horror, and he had played the first 2 levels, and I told him to push on because once you get past that, to me, there was no horror left. Like the whole Paris level, it's bright. You're inside this office building. You have the sniper rifle. Like, you don't feel that is horror, do you? Or is it just the visceralness of it?
Well, the horror that I'm talking about is more, it's not really horror from like, oh my God, I'm scared to, it's not that kind of horror. Well, the farmhouse is kind of that. It's dark, it's dreary. You're in this creepy kind of house. That is kind of that. And it's right. Yeah. As you get further on into these levels, they get more colorful. It's not as drab and dreary, but you still get into these situations. The way it happens in that game is you'll do something and it's like it's like you flip a switch and then all of a sudden there's an invasion of zombies, and like you'll have to deal with like a stampede basically of zombies. And then once you deal with them, then it kind of calms down again. And then the lady gets in your headset and starts talking to you about what you got to do. So it's kind of like you get to these points where you trigger these attacks. And when you trigger the attacks and when they're coming at you, because it's like, oh shit, there's a spider guy coming at me over here. There's a guy coming over there. It's just the it's not really jump scares either. I know Gary mentioned jump scares. When I think of a jump scare, to me, a jump scare is like, okay, you walk down this hallway, and then as soon as you turn left, there's an automatic scare that comes out. This isn't really what this is. This is like guys are coming at you 360 degrees. And if you're not paying attention, yeah, it's kind of like a jump scare because you're not paying attention. But I don't think they just materialize out of like thin air.
I agree. Yeah. It's not really jump scares. It's because as soon as you turn around, it's a little bit like Brookhaven in that respect. You know, you can be concentrated on a certain section, and then suddenly you'll turn around and they're right there on top of you. I guess that's what I meant.
And what is similar to Brookhaven too is, you know how I was telling you kind of the fight or flight thing where I turn into a psycho Charles Manson. In Brookhaven, that kind of happened to me as well too, where I'd kind of do that.
So I think they announced, I don't think they did, they announced some additional content come to this game, and I'm pretty sure it's free. I should have had some notes on it. Sorry for that, not having it. But from what I can recollect, it's going to be like a horde mode, which I think is more in tune with the Killing Floor franchise itself. The Killing Floor Incursion, you know, they had a narrative to it, and that's not how they normally are. This one's more about having bodies pile up on the floor. So I think fans of the series will probably like this update.
Okay.
I didn't try co-op, but I do want to, like, I want to finish the whole game single, and then I do want to try some co-op.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just go quickly on to the next one. Well, before I go on to my next game, I just want to mention Lucky Night Texas Hold'em Poker, which Steve spoke about last week. It's a poker game, you know, in VR, but this is quite a good one. I enjoyed it. I've not played Texas Hold'em for a long time, so I was a little bit concerned that I wouldn't remember all the orders of the cards or the hands that you get or anything like that. But I did okay in it, and I enjoyed it. I played, like Steve, I played against other people, but I think there are bots in this game as well, so you can play single player.
Well, someone corrected me. Apparently there aren't bots. I thought it did. So I think I was wrong last week, and maybe the person that corrected me was wrong, but it's possible. We should probably throw out that caveat that neither of us really know, since we've both only played with other people.
Yeah, I'll be going back into it though, so I'll check that out because it's a good game, and it works exactly how you want a poker game to work in VR. You know, there's not a lot to it. It's a game of poker, and you can operate it in the same way as you do in real life for the most part. It's really enjoyable. But the main
sit down. Do you
yeah,
sit
you do.
down?
Yeah, and it's touch controllers. I played on the Oculus Rift, and it's touch controllers. That's one thing actually I will mention. You know, if I'm playing this on the Vive, I do wonder how well the Vive ones would work with this game. They'll work and it will be perfectly fine, but the touch controllers, because they're a little bit smaller and they're more sort of fitting into the shape of your hands and everything, it's a little bit more natural to sit in front of your desk and do this rather than holding these larger Vive ones, I would think. Although, you know, I haven't tried it and I will give it a go just to compare them. The main one I want to talk about though is the Solus Project. Again, this is an older title. You know, I picked this up not long after I got my Vive. But for whatever reason, I didn't stick with it. And I think it's because at that time I had so many other games to play, but also this is a conversion. This is a port from a monitor game, you know, a flat game. So I was a little bit put off by that, some of the mechanics, the way that they work in this game. But I've got to say, going back to it now, a lot of the problems, performance issues that I experienced originally are now completely gone. This runs great and it works very well as a VR game. It's got a few little game mechanics that have been transferred over from the monitor game. So you've got to get over that. It's not perfect, but all in all, I'd say this is one of my favorite conversions from a standard monitor game into VR. And it's a game, just very briefly, you play the part of somebody who is on a crew of a spaceship that goes to a new planet in order to colonize it, because Earth is something's gone wrong. Some kind of apocalyptic event has happened on Earth and it's dying, so you have to go and colonize a new planet. When you get into the orbit of this planet, the ship that you're on actually randomly explodes, and you find yourself on the surface of this planet, and the game is really around surviving and exploration. That's the gameplay. Very, very enjoyable. There's a lot going on with this game, but it's a good price as well. You know, I think it's about £15, so I guess around $20. Yeah, really good game for anybody who hasn't played this for a long time. I recommend going back and giving it another try, because yeah, this is probably my go-to game at the moment for VR.
That game's coming to PlayStation VR very soon too. I think September something.
That's right. Yeah.
Coming, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, that's probably part of the reason why I went back into this, because I heard from some other people that it was coming to PSVR, and I thought it just reminded me, you know, I forgot about this game. I knew I bought it a long time ago, but it had a few little problems, but they've all been resolved really. Chris, what else? Have you got anything else you want to talk about this week?
Well, yeah, first off, I have the Solus Project too, so I need to get back to that, because I did buy it and then I just never played it for whatever reason. I think I know at least Anthony tried this. It's just a tech demo called Aircar. It came out on Oculus Home, and it's basically looks like this kind of like dystopian city nighttime setting where you're in a ship similar to like Eve Valkyrie or something like that, the similar controls. But it's just so immersive. I don't know what they did in this game. I was in there for 20 minutes just flying around, and there's not even anything to do. I don't get it. It was a good demo though.
Yeah, me and Gary, we did talk about that one last week, and we both really liked it. Like, I agree with you completely. It's like you're doing nothing but drifting around the city, but it was still a very good experience.
It's because the world that they created there, you know, dealing with the limitations of the resolution that we have and everything, it has that city feel. Like you can kind of buy into it. Like it's the rain coming down, and it's the futuristic skyscrapers and just the vibe to it. One thing I did experience though with this game is, okay, smooth turning. That doesn't work for me very well. I don't know what it is, because I play Battlezone, and Battlezone, the tank game, right? And it's smooth turning, and
didn't you just say 20 minutes ago you don't get any VR motion sickness?
Yeah, well, okay. The one issue I do have in VR seems to be like, if you just allow me to smooth turn instead of going click, 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 click. If you're going to do that, I guess I need to be in a cockpit where I'm really in the cockpit, and the cockpit is really part of my overall periphery. And in this one, I guess I'm seeing so much of the windows that when I'm doing this smooth turning, it's like my brain is like, no, this does not compute. I had to quit out of it after. I was loving the vibe of it, and I was kind of like, oh, let me see if I can get low down. How close can I get to that building over there where the billboard is? You know, there's like an ocean and like docks and stuff. I was like, can I go over by there? You know, I was having fun, but then I started doing some of this turning, and I was like, whoa.
I felt it in that experience too, but I also feel it in a game like Eve Valkyrie, and I find that it's not so much the turn, but the roll. So when you have, you can control all those, and you control it in Aircar as well. Starblood Arena is another game that did it. Like it's the smooth turning plus the roll, which is how you would normally bank if you were turning an aircraft. And yeah, that'll mess anybody up. And I think it messes you up in real life too. Not that I've flown a jet or anything, but I've heard people describe it that in real life that'll actually can make you feel it a little bit.
You know, Starblood Arena, there was a demo for that. I don't know if you heard, but they put out a demo, and I downloaded the demo. This is actually when I was in Bodega Bay. I tried this. And Starblood Arena, same exact thing. I started like turning this way and that way, and I was like, no, I can't play this. And it's really bizarre because Battlezone, no problem. And other people play Battlezone, and they're like, I can't do Battlezone. But I was like, I could do Battlezone.
I'm sort of with Steve in terms, I think it's more the roll when I'm going around these buildings and you're rolling around and then pulling back and sort of going around sideways. For me, that affects me more. But I've got to say that maybe part of the reason I don't get affected by it quite so much is because I've played a lot of Elite Dangerous. And when you're at the space stations and flying around the space stations in Elite Dangerous, it's very reminiscent of this kind of feeling, really.
Do you mean like the level? Like if your ship gets kind of like that and you're like, as long as your ship is like centered straight and you're going like this, you're okay. But if your ship is kind of like tilted.
It's more, yeah, that is what I mean. But it's more, it's not just slightly. It's where if you're rolling sort of 90 degrees and then following the path around the building that way, I think that's what makes the difference to me.
I'm the exact same way. It's the roll combined with smooth. Like if I'm standing still and I only roll, I think I'm okay. But if I'm moving forward and turning a little bit and also rolling, which is how a bank would occur in an aircraft. Yeah, it definitely is unsettling for me. But it's in a good way. It's not like when playing a game like Solus Project, which I haven't played, or some other game where there's smooth natural locomotion. This type of sickness is a little okay because it's realistic. Like if you don't fly aircraft a lot, that's something you got to deal with in real life. So I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I had the same issue and I just never did that. That was good.
Chris, actually, just before we move on to Steve's next game, I just want to get your impressions because you've got down on the list Miyubi, which I know that we've all experienced and I thought was fantastic. I'm interested to hear your impressions of that.
Yeah, I really liked it. The story got a lot better when I continued it. I was probably like half before. I just had finished the scene with the teenager, like it goes into the teenager's room or whatever. Yeah.
Is that the part where he's there with his friends? Or
yeah. And then, I mean, I don't know. We can probably talk spoilers now, right? You think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think it's safe.
I was so happy that the grandpa became like a main character at the end, and like, yeah, I always was like, I hope that guy kind of talks more to me or stuff, but then yeah, it ended up being great. So the ending I thought was kind of weird, but other than that, it was good.
The acting was good. Like, did you notice I thought the dad did such an outstanding job. I don't remember that actor's name, but like I thought he did a damn good job.
Yeah, I mean, it's so great. Yeah, it really is awesome. And then I thought the grandpa did a great job. And like, I don't know, I wish I went to wherever he wanted to go, like the Key Islands or whatever at the end when I was in his car. That was cool.
That was, I actually forgot the ending until you just mentioned that part then, actually. Yeah, so because you're traveling along on the passenger seat of his car, aren't you, as he's driving along? Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the best 360 videos that I've seen. And it's even beyond that, it's because it's got stereoscopic view and there's other little things that go on, Steve and I mentioned before where you're being filmed in a certain section and you can look at the TV, which is showing the feed of you, and you can move around your head. Even though it's a video, you're still getting the movement that you're making in real time. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and overall, just a good story to tell. I feel like things becoming old, like that's a good. Yeah,
great. Steve, have you got anything else you want to mention?
Yeah, nothing else new. It's actually been a light week, and that's been a little bit refreshing because I feel like we've had a barrage of games over the last 3 or 4 weeks. But so I played a little more Alien Isolation, a little more Archangel, and I'm enjoying those two. But the game I'm going to talk about is Assetto Corsa. It is on sale now for $11.99 US dollars. I have no clue what that is in Gary's land. But I have to say, like, I don't know if I enjoyed it, but I'm not a racing enthusiast. I have a Thrustmaster T150 racing wheel, and I really enjoyed Drive Club on PlayStation VR, and it plays really well with this wheel. But unfortunately, it's held back graphically. And I've played Project Cars, the Pagani edition that's available for free on Steam. So I wanted to give Assetto Corsa a try. And once I'm in a race, I like it just fine. It feels good. It runs really good on the 1080 Ti. And I was able to completely load up with, I think, 15 other cars. And in those moments at the beginning of the race, I had the render preview up, and I was dropped down to 45 frames per second, but it still felt okay. I don't know if that's the asynchronous time warp, asynchronous space warp stuff kicking in. But then as we spread out in the race, I climbed back up to 90 frames, no problem. So it feels good. It looks good. To me, I thought it looked better than Project Cars, and certainly better than Drive Club. But where it falls apart for me, and it's not a knock on the game or the genre, because this thing is very deep. I mean, you can really get into the weeds if you're a big racing enthusiast. But for me, I just want to go in and have an arcadey experience. I just want to get in and jerk on the wheel. I don't want to perfectly line everything up. I don't want to calibrate my wheel down to, you know, half a degree and precisely calibrate my throttles or anything like that. I just want to get in and have some races. And this game kind of falls apart in that sense, because you have to do things with your mouse, like in between races, or I couldn't find a way. It didn't. I couldn't get my D-pad that's on the racing wheel to be able to restart things as often, or go into a new race, really, I should say. Whereas Drive Club on the PlayStation VR, you can do everything from the racing wheel. You never have to take the headset off. You never have to do anything. It's just all in there. So that's what I'm really looking for on PC VRs. I want a racing game that can leverage my wheel, where I can just put the headset on and stay inside the headset for half an hour, whatever, and not have to keep going back over to my mouse and keyboard. That is a huge downside for me. And again, it's not a knock on the developers and the Assetto Corsa game itself. It's a phenomenal game, but the VR implementation, I would think they could have come up with some sort of baked-in solution so you could stay inside your headset.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the menus got better, because I played this game a bit back in the Dev Kit 2 days. I had a Logitech G27 racing wheel back then. It was really fun, but man, the menus were rough back then, and it sounds like they're not completely, you know, perfect. You can't do everything on the wheel still, but I wish I didn't sell my racing wheel, because I'm expecting, like, once there's like a Mario Kart VR type thing out there, I'm going to want to play it. So
yeah, I mean, it's an irritation of Assetto Corsa. It's my main gripe with it, is the fact that you can't do everything just from within the VR headset. You have to keep going back to your desktop and setting up the race, and then you can operate things within your headset. Then I don't know why they've not incorporated that. It doesn't seem, just to have a static screen of a menu in VR in front of you so you can sort everything out would be great, but it doesn't work like that, and it's annoying. But for me, overall, this is my favorite VR racing game, mainly because performance is great and you can really ramp up the super sampling, so everything looks really clear. For me, like you, Steve, I think that this game looks better than Project Cars overall. I think Project Cars has got more visual effects, more lighting effects and things like that, but I don't notice them when I'm racing. I want clarity. I want a sharp image, and I think Assetto Corsa gives me a better overall experience. I played a little bit of Dirt Rally yesterday, actually, and that's I don't go into that too often, and for some reason, I don't know what it is, I don't get great performance in Dirt Rally, and maybe there's something wrong with my settings, but even when I have it set up on low, I'm still finding that I'm going into reprojection or using asynchronous space, whatever. You know, it just doesn't seem to run too well. That's the main thing why I'm drawn to Assetto Corsa. I think performance is great, and it looks good in the headset as well. Okay, well, Anthony, have you got anything else that you want to talk about?
Just a couple quick little comments about some games that I've played. So Lone Echo. Just one little thing I wanted to mention about Lone Echo. It's weird because I've been stuck in so many places in Lone Echo as I played through the game. And what I came to realize is I was playing the game kind of wrong. So you know how, okay, so you have your two controllers, right? Your right hand, your left hand. Now on your left hand, I think it might be the X button, but there's a button that you hit that brings up this little tablet where it's like dialogue something, you know, and it's You know what I'm, because, okay, so on the right hand, you'll scan something, right? You'll scan something and then you'll pull out the thing and you can place it here and it has the list of all the things that you want to do. But on your left hand, there's this other button that you hit that brings up this other little square, which is like, let's say, for example, Gary, okay, you know how I told you that I was stuck outside of the ship, this alien ship or whatever. I'm trying to get into the ship, right? And I saw that it said damaged hull or weakened hull or whatever. And so I thought, okay, weakened hull. I can get inside the ship through here. So I'm going to take out my blowtorch and I'm going to open up a hole, right? But it never let me do anything. And so I'm like, but Gary mentioned something about the weakened hull, but for some reason I still can't do anything. So what I did was I went on YouTube and I checked out somebody's video of that exact same section. And like, there's this one guy that he has like 8 or 9 videos of Lone Echo where he's going through every different part of the game. And as soon as he went over to the weakened hull part, he immediately hit the X button on his left controller, which brought up this other little thing. And then it's like, it says like weakened hull, investigate or something. Then you hit that. And then your voice as the robot says, here's a weakened hole. I think I can open it. And then it shows the blue part where you can then do it.
Okay, I didn't realize that. Yeah, so it's basically like the tablet that shows your mission objectives and things like that, isn't it? That's that.
No, that's on the right hand.
Oh, is it?
Different one. But it looks almost exactly the same, but for some reason it's on the left X button. Steve, you want to say something?
Yeah, so when you Gary, you had to have done it, I think. So
I must have done, yeah.
when you're pointing at things, you'll have dialogue options. They'll appear a little bit different. Like you can point at live, and if there's a moment where you can have a dialogue option, whether if you press X, you can say it'll give you 2 to 3 choices of a response, or she'll say, "Hey Jack, how are you doing today?" And you know, you'll have like kind of different toned responses, a la a game like Mass Effect or something. Now the dialogue trees don't get very, very deep, but yes, it has the dialogue trees, and depending on what you choose, Jack will actually say it, I'm pretty sure, but then her responses or whomever you're talking to as you get further in the game, the responses that they then give are tailored based on the dialogue choices that you make. But yeah, we didn't actually, it's kind of ironic that he brings it up, because you and I and I don't think we talked about it at all when we spent that long portion talking about Lone Echo. We really didn't mention the dialogue trees.
Well, it's weird because the whole entire time I've been playing Lone Echo, I very rarely hit the X button on the left controller to bring up this little pad. You know what I mean? And then, but when I'm watching this guy's playthrough, he's doing it all the freaking time. Like anytime he sees anything where there's some words, you know, where they have it highlighted like biomass or whatever, you know, you see it in the world that it's highlighting something. He would go over there, he'd immediately hit X, and then on his little tablet, it has a little square thing, and it would say something like biomass something, and then he would click on it, and then it would trigger a dialogue where himself as, what's your name as the robot? Jack, right? Jack?
Yeah,
Jack,
that's right,
the AI that you are.
Yeah.
Okay. So then he would click on it, and then you have like a dialogue where you start, yeah, this biomass is an alien, but you know, whatever you. And so one of the problems I have with Lone Echo, I mean, the only complaint I have with it is it seems like the game it's like waiting for these triggers. And if you don't trigger that little dialogue, it's never going to happen for you. I was stuck outside that ship looking for, how the hell do I get into this ship? I've tried everything. It says weakened hull or damaged hull or whatever, but I can't burn it open. But as soon as I do the dialogue thing, then immediately it shows the blue thing because it just unlocked that little portion of it. Now I can open it up and get into the ship. It's
strange because I don't remember specifically doing that at any stage, but maybe because when you're the character talks to you or whatever talks to you, you have a limited amount of time that you can then press a button in order to activate the next dialogue part of the dialogue tree, I guess. And maybe I just did that all the time. I don't remember specifically pressing the X button in order to go into this separate tablet. Maybe I did. I just don't remember.
Well, you know how we use the controllers, and it's like I was playing Madden with my son recently, and he's like, "Dad, how do you tackle?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just do it." You know what I mean? Because it's just like you're hitting the buttons, and you don't remember like which button does what, but you kind of have a muscle memory. But for the whole game, I wasn't really doing that, or maybe I did it like once or twice. And then when I saw this dude's playthrough, I'm like, man, I almost need to start this whole entire game over now that I know about that. Because I was stuck in so many little parts where I had to keep repeating it over and over again because I wasn't triggering the dialogue. It's kind of like Wilson's Heart in that way, where it's like, if you don't, that's what I'm talking about, arbitrary. Like, if you don't trigger that dialogue, you're not going farther. You have to eventually trigger that. And I wasn't triggering it. And that's why I kept getting stuck, and you guys weren't stuck.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, I can imagine it's frustrating because I've experienced the same thing, probably in Wilson's Heart as well. A similar kind of situation where you feel like you're doing everything right, and yet you've just not activated one very small part of the game in order to progress you along. Even though you've completed all the puzzles, you've done all the sections, it's just not progressing you.
That's sort of the problem with an interactive experience. And at the end of the day, these are all programs and are inherently flawed. You're just always going to run into triggers and things that can be broken or out of sequence, and it's virtually impossible for a team to make something that's completely foolproof and can't be stomped, can't be broken, can't be hung. And that's just part of the way. And the more interactive these become, the more we're going to run into stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, they did those tutorials early in the game, but I don't think they ever explained this like left tablet for dialogue thing like as a separate thing. Like
they did. It wasn't in the
wasn't paying attention, I guess.
But it wasn't in when you go into the how you would run those programs for your tutorials where you learn how to jet around and brake and do all that. It wasn't in that. It was in the main kind of like it's when you first kind of wake up and are talking to Liv for the first time. It was briefly addressed then, so it wasn't in the tutorials, so to speak, that way. But it was shown.
Okay. Okay, I think we're pretty much at the end of the show now. Has anybody else got anything else they want to mention?
I do have one thing to mention. Did you guys do this last week? Because I didn't see the very end of our last episode, but what I wanted to do, this was a couple weeks ago, I wanted to mention some of the people that have been leaving iTunes reviews for us, and I just wanted to mention a few of the guys that left reviews. Have you guys done that at all?
We didn't. No.
We wanted to, but then we didn't have it pulled up.
Okay, so I have it pulled up, and I just wanted to mention this because we do always ask for people to leave reviews, and so I just wanted to say thank you to some of these people that left reviews. Like we recently had a review from Hypercube 009, and he gave us a 5-star review. Fantastic. He says, truly excellent discussion of current VR news. Love what you guys do. That was cool. And then we had another review. This was on July 27th by Cleveland Steel. 5-star review, my favorite VR podcast. He says, there's good diversity among the hosts. They dig into details of the different subjects, and I like their personalities. One other one we got, July 25th, Marvin the Earthling, the only VR podcast I need, 5-star review. And he says, great breakdowns of anything to do with VR and even some AR, MR. The hosts appear both knowledgeable and like everymen. They play a ton of games, so you don't have to. VR is a new thing, and it can be hard to know what's good and what's not. These guys help you navigate through the sea of confusion. I look forward to it every week, and I hope they keep up the good work. So I just want to say thank you to Hypercube 009, Cleveland Steel, Marvin the Earthling. Those were 3 recent iTunes reviews we have, and we truly appreciate it. It's comments like this, I can tell you, as one of the people that's involved with this podcast, you guys don't realize this, but when we get comments like this, it really helps us keep going with the show and keep being excited about the show. And so we really like that. So if you guys get a chance, I know it's a little bit of a pain to do iTunes reviews. You have to make sure you're like signed into the podcast, and you know, you have to have the podcast app, and it takes a few steps. But if you can do it, we truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
It gives a sense of energy, I think, you know, because sometimes I'm like, I'm a dad with some gray hair and a job and kids, and I have a YouTube channel. Like, you know, sometimes I question it, but at the same time, when people give good feedback, it kind of validates it and says, okay, what I'm doing is pretty cool. So
yeah.
And shout out, sorry if I'm still in it, Gary.
No, go ahead.
Shout out to Fluke Rogi. I'm not sure the pronunciation, but thanks for always posting our videos on the Oculus subreddit.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, yeah, thanks to Fluke Rogi for doing that on the Oculus subreddit. If anybody wants to do it on the PSVR subreddit, if we have a show which has a certain amount of PSVR news, then that'd be appreciated as well, because due to their rules, we're not able to do it ourselves. So, you know, it gets us a few more viewers, I guess. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for episode 50 anyway. So thanks for watching this episode. And, you know, like we say, please leave a review on iTunes. Please leave a comment in the video. And for anybody just who only listens to the audio podcast, we do have a channel on YouTube, VR Roundtable. You can find us very easily. If you want to check us out on there and leave a comment, subscribe to us, that's obviously always appreciated. But other than that, I think we can call it a day there. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Take it easy.